Welcome to the Fill Your Cups podcast. We're your hosts, Morgan
and Bailey. Welcome to today's episode, guys. We are doing an episode kind of like a let's get deep a little bit, but we're just going to talk about assuming positive intent.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that has really shifted a mindset for me a while ago, and I don't think I saw it anywhere. I think I just decided to do it. It's so easy to think negative thoughts or think that people are doing things to harm or hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
Or just to be mean to you, whereas a lot of times that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
And so somewhere along the way, I just wrote this idea down of something that we should do, and it feels like a good time to break it out, especially as we're, almost hitting Q2 of the year.
Mm-hmm.
We are going into summer. You might as well go into it with the best mindset and best attitude you can.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be talking about kind of how to switch that mindset today and why you should try to do that.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it's something that you hear, but putting it into practice is a different story and can really change a lot.
Changes so much. It really does. Yeah, I feel like it. I don't know. I'll tell you guys how it made me feel later in the episode. But before we get too into that, what's filling your cup today?
I just have water today.
Nice.
What about you?
Nice. I've got water as well, but then I also do have a little bit of coffee still that I was drinking earlier. So probably finish that up during our episode.
In your Mama Bear mug.
In my Mama Bear mug.
Did someone gift that to you?
No, I bought that for myself a long time ago, but it's because I was like, Mason, is this going to be really embarrassing if I buy this for myself? But I'm talking about Waylon, because this is way before we were pregnant. He's like, no, you should do it. And so I only use it at home. But now I am going to be a Mama Bear. So
Cute.
I'm like, I can use it whenever I want.
Cute. I love it.
Yes.
Well, I know we have a shout out. These were really fun.
Yes. We just did our spring cleaning episode, and we just happened to put on Instagram hey guys, what are some of the spring cleaning items on your checklist? And we got so many responses. And so we just figured we'd share them just in case you need some extra inspo.
I was really shocked at how many we got because I was like, it made it clear that people are thinking about spring cleaning, but I was really surprised. So I loved this because the social work scoop is my friend Mandy's social work account.
Yes.
And she replied from that account and said cleaning out and reorganizing my closet, which
number one tip.
Yeah, which is also great for your mental health, I feel like. So it goes with the social work scoop.
For sure.
And then let's see, Jessica Gary said cleaning out the garage and cleaning up the back patio.
Yes.
I wonder if Jessica's going to have any back patio happy hour.
I don't know. The thing about the happy hour was I was like, you don't even have to invite people over. I'm not saying make it a party, but even if it's just you and your husband or you and your kids, that's so fun. Julia responded and said cleaning under the sink because she needs to reorganize her cleaning products. And I was like, yes, do the organization. That's such a good spot to start with.
Yeah. And then Molly said sanitizing the laundry baskets. I have never done that.
Never done that. I've never even thought of it. But I was like, it does make sense. You're putting all of your dirty stuff in that constantly.
Yeah.
And then putting clean stuff in it. And it's probably is pretty dirty.
Yeah, I never thought about that. But
I know. And I'm taking stuff from my car, putting it in my laundry basket. I've used that to transfer books if I got to go from upstairs to downstairs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
All types of stuff hit my laundry basket. So
yeah.
I don't know. We just wanted to say thank you guys for interacting with us. Make sure you do follow us on Instagram, TikTok. I think that's really all we have. YouTube. All we really have right now. But thank you for interacting and helping us keep this thing alive.
Absolutely. Yeah, we love it so much. So into our episode for the day, you thought of this one. Want to talk about where it came from a bit?
Yes. I feel like this idea came to me right after we did our victim mindset episode because it's so easy to be in the victim mindset. And I do think that this episode kind of is hand in hand. Whereas instead of not taking things so personally, we're just talking about how to totally shift the mindset. But I specifically remember talking to you and Julia about it at the winery for my birthday and being like, guys, I've had a revelation. This is genius. It was at the same time as my I'm not everyone's cup of tea revelation, which has helped me so much. But I just remember being like, I just don't know why we're all so mad at each other all the time and why someone can say one thing, it can ruin our whole days. Someone can, you can misinterpret what someone's saying. You can think that this person's being so bossy and such a dick, whereas in their mindset, They're just telling you what needs to be done. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know. And I was just like, why are we so angry all the time? And I remember being like, I have made the decision to shift it. And instead of thinking that everyone's saying things with negative intent, I'm just going to assume everyone's saying things with positive intent.
Yeah.
And sometimes maybe that's a little bit of gaslighting myself. I don't know. But it has worked wonders for me. It's made me less angry, especially like in traffic. I'm so much
Yeah.
less angry in traffic, which is funny when Mason listens to this because he's gonna be like, you're constantly scowling while you're driving. I'm gonna be like, okay, that's because of slow drivers, not people who like cut me off and stuff.
Yeah.
But like, it's helped me with that. It's helped me be like, okay, maybe that person's having a really bad day. Maybe this isn't directed at me. Maybe it's more them. Like,
Yes.
so that's just kind of where the idea came from. I'm pretty sure it came from the victim mindset episode, where if you haven't listened to that one, definitely check that one out. But yeah, that's just kind of where the idea came from.
Yeah, I do think that it makes such a huge difference, especially in those everyday occurrences like the cash register that checks you out, or the people in traffic, or somebody that bumps into you, or like things like that. The airport person, things like that. Just assuming the best can make such a big difference. I feel like, and we'll talk about this probably more later, but I feel like the relationships where it's harder or hardest are the ones that you've had a long time, because often I find myself assuming their intent based off of my past history and knowledge of who they are and how they do things. And so it's a lot harder for me to assume positive intent in that case.
Yes.
So I am excited about this episode because I feel like
Me
it can
too.
kind of really dive deep into that.
Yes, I completely agree. When I was kind of writing about this, I was like, yeah, a lot of us assume negative intent. That's kind of where it's easier to go to. It's easier to go to in your mind. And I think it's because a lot of us struggle with, and like often without realizing it, we struggle with the feelings that have come from our past experiences. Like, oh, well, this person did this to me one time. That must mean you're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Or self-protection mechanisms where maybe you feel a little embarrassed or a little shameful or something like that. And it's easier to feel like you're being attacked when you're not. Or just like your brain just kind of rewiring itself to try to keep you safe in a way.
Yes.
So it's so easy. And I do think it's a natural instinct, but we really do want to rewrite it and kind of start shifting that mindset.
Yeah, you said the rewiring the brain thing. It made me think of how I've heard this lots of times, but how our brains are actually wired. But I've heard this before and I like quickly put it into Google, but human brains are actually considered to have a negativity bias, because meaning like we're more likely to focus and remember negative information and experiences than positive ones. And it's because it's like a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
Like in the past, it helps us be attuned to threat and danger. So in the past, our ancestral history or whatever, people had to remember the negative things so that, whenever you touch the fire or whatever, you remember it's bad and you don't do it again.
Right.
And so now those threats are not quite as much the case, but our brains have still evolved to be wired that way. So it's something you really have to work against. And like when someone does something that you think is a threat to you, quote unquote threat to you socially or something like that, that's not the same as them, threatening your life or something.
Right.
And so you have to remind in your brain that to look for the positive instead of the negative. So it is, I definitely think that it is a neurological thing that we kind of have to focus on.
Rewire.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we wrote down a couple almost like how-tos, except that we're just kind of like dive into each of them, I think, and just go from there.
Before we do, I really liked you wrote something in this outline about when you, like a good example of this is like you see two friends hanging out without you on social media, instead of assuming that they didn't invite you on purpose, like assume that they just needed one-on-one time together or something.
Yeah.
I felt like that was really relatable because I love how close all the sisters are. And I love that I really truly feel like we all do see the best in each other.
Yeah.
And we've been really intentional about building that over the years because we've all been very scared of being not friends with each other.
Yes.
And we're like, we don't ever want it to get to a point like that.
Yeah.
So we want to stay friends and stay positive with one another. And so one of the ways that we do that, I think, is by assuming positive intent. And that's
Mhm.
that I thought of that, like, even this last week,
Yeah.
you hung out with Julia separately, and I was like, oh, I love that for you guys, you know? Like,
Yeah.
that's so exciting. Like, you guys do need some one-on-one time together.
Instead of being like, wait, why didn't you invite me?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And like feeling left out, even though I do get FOMO really easily. Like in that case, I was like, that's really beautiful. I love that.
Mhm.
And I felt that way when, you know, Chloe Love has shared things with you and
Yeah.
hasn't shared them with me yet. I'm like, I love that she just feels like she can open up to you. And
Yeah.
it's not like, wait, why doesn't she feel like she can open up to me? It's more just like, oh my gosh, that's so sweet that you guys have
Mhm.
that bond or whatever. And yeah, so I've noticed that it's a lot easier for me. And I think it's just because we've put so much work into it.
Yeah.
All as sisters.
Very
But
intentional.
it's a lot easier to me in our sister relationships now than a lot of other relationships.
Yeah.
And so I was like, maybe that's something that we can like if you have a relationship that you do find you give a lot of grace and assume positive intent,
Mhm.
utilizing whatever your mental framework is about that relationship
Mhm.
to the other ones that you have a harder time with.
Yes, completely agree. I wonder if it's also easier with our sisters because we're all on the same page and we all are happy for each other. We're all so supportive of each other. We all know like this person's not going to be angry at me. Like they might be upset with me at something. I don't know. Like it could be anything stupid. But I feel like that's such a safe relationship for me because I always know like even Julia and I when we did have our dinner, like we had talked about some pretty like intense or pretty deep topics, and I knew that her view on the topic or the way she felt about things did not have to do with the way she felt about me. I think that it's so hard to put into words, but
No,
I don't know.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Thank you. Are you ready to dive right in?
Let's do it.
Let's get in there. Well, first thing is I want you to pause and check the story that you're telling yourself. So, when you catch yourself assuming that someone meant something hurtful or rude, instead of assuming that, ask yourself what's another possible explanation? Or ask yourself, is there actual evidence that they meant harm or am I filling in the blanks? That one's so big. And I feel like there's certain people in my life that I do feel more heightened sensitivity with, or I feel more like, oh, they definitely mean harm. And it's like, not all the time they do. Yeah. So am I filling in the blanks where there's really nothing to be filled in? I think that that's something I had to ask myself a lot. Like, did they even mean that?
Yeah.
Probably not.
I think that this one's really big in texting conversations.
Yeah.
Because in texting conversations, you can say one thing and it's totally interpreted a different way. And if you're texting someone, especially someone that is not necessarily like safe, like you were talking about with us or whatever, someone that you do question yourself around or you have fought with or maybe has even intended negative things in the past and you have really a relationship or history,
right?
Provide, you know, it's supporting the evidence in your brain that that person means harm, then it can be really, really hard when you get a text and you're like, what did they mean by that?
Yeah.
And instead of asking, oh my God, what did they mean by that? Are they implying this, the worst? You know, it's really, really hard to sit there and be like, you know, they didn't say that. I can assume that they did not mean the worst.
Yep.
And just behave as though they didn't.
Yeah.
And I do this a lot, honestly. Like if someone sends me something and I'm like, that was really weird. or why are they even saying that? I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna take what they said for what it is, and I'm just gonna respond and be like, oh, okay, well, sure, you know,
yeah. I'm not gonna read between the lines. I'm not gonna try to figure out what they actually meant. I'm just gonna go with what they said.
Yeah, because if they do mean negative intent, then I'm giving into it and like going through whatever mind hoops that they want me to or whatever.
Yeah.
And if they mean positive intent, then I'm just wasting space and time and energy convoluting whatever it is that I got. So I feel like this one's really, really good to ask whenever you receive a text message or even like an email at work or something like that that you're like, is this passive aggressive?
Yeah,
Maybe
that has like one too many periods.
right. Yeah. You're like, is this passive aggressive? Instead of assuming that, just assuming, oh, they mean exactly what they say.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I also like the question of asking yourself is like, what's another possible explanation? I feel like I do that a lot where I'll see something or I hear something or whatever happens and I'm like, like, and I think that it's easier for me because I have been trying to assume positive intent for so much longer.
Mhm.
But I'm like, what are they actually trying to say? Like, it's funny because we just talked about not reading in between the lines.
Mhm.
But if I get something that seems in my head like weird, and I'm like, there's no way they meant that. Like,
Mhm.
let's say with my sister-in-law or something, it's a short text, and I'm like, that's not like a normal relationship that we have with each other. There's no way that they meant how
Yeah.
I'm reading it. And then I can look at it and be like, okay, hold on. I think that they're saying something else. Or like,
Yeah.
okay, I think that this is what like how they meant it. Or I think they just thought I would be excited to read it. Or
Yeah.
something like that. I actually had a specific example with mom this week where I had like shortly after the baby gender reveal, I had told her like, yeah, don't buy anything for the nursery though because I don't know like decoration wise what I'm really going with and I don't want you to like waste your money on it. She heard don't buy anything for the baby. And so she had texted me this week and was like, hey, I know that you asked me not to buy anything, but if it has like a return and like I'll give you the receipt. And so if you don't like it, like, can I buy it? And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry if you thought that's what I was implying. I did not mean to imply that. I meant specifically nursery decoration. Like, don't buy wall hangings and don't buy shelves and don't buy things that are going to go on a bookshelf.
Sheets and
because
blankets and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah. And I was like, and that's only because I don't really know what I'm going with yet.
Yeah.
And I feel like I am kind of picky about my decoration. Like
Yeah.
it's almost in the way where people wouldn't buy you decoration to put in your living room, but they want to buy it for your baby's room because that's so much cuter.
Yeah.
But I'm like, but I don't know what I'm going with yet. So that's specifically what I meant. However, like it must have been the way I said it. I must not have been like super clear or like it, there's a lot of things going
Right.
on. And so for her, she heard don't buy anything. And I was like, no, like if you want to buy clothes and diapers and toys and like go for it. But even blankets are fine with me. Like buy whatever you want for the baby. Just don't buy nursery decor. Is
Yeah.
basically what it was. And she was like, oh, okay. Like thanks. Thanks for clearing that up. And I was like, no problem.
Yeah.
So it was just funny that it was like, okay, what's the other possible explanation? Because I didn't mean what I accidentally implied or I didn't mean what she heard.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was I was like, funny that we're doing this episode today.
Yeah. I said this a little bit earlier, but I feel like the what's another possible explanation question I do better with whenever, and this is probably really annoying for the people in my life, Jared in particular, but whenever other people are talking about something that annoyed them about somebody else.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll be like, oh, well, they probably meant this. And like, I assume the positive intent anytime someone else is talking about like something that bothered them.
Yes.
And I actually remember in college, in like when I was living in a house with 4 other girls, that I had to sometimes like kind of bite my tongue because I would play devil's advocate almost.
Yes.
And I don't do it on purpose. It's just automatically where my brain goes. But they would be like, yeah, and then she said this or something. And I'm like, oh, well, she probably just meant this. Or like, or I remember one time like they had this really awkward scenario with a girl that used to live at our house and whatever. And I was like, okay, well, put yourself in her shoes. Like, and this was a pivotal moment where they were like, I get where you're coming from, Morgan, but I'm not there yet. And like, shut up.
And you're like, let me
but I was
complain.
like, yeah, but I was like, put yourself in her shoes. Like, she probably walked in, felt excluded, was like really confused, and then that's why she said the thing.
Yeah.
And their whole point was the thing she said was rude.
Yeah.
And I definitely could have just been like, yeah, that was rude. But instead I was like, hey, come on, like don't gang up on her. And she's not even there for like, I'm defending her and she's not even there. But
no, I do that all the time. It's so much easier to see it happening in other people.
Yeah. Today, Jared did it with his flight. He was talking about, I guess, his last flight. He had a nonstop, but some people had a through flight. So they didn't get off the plane. And the girl in the aisle seat turned to Jared, who was in the middle, and the lady that was on the window. And she was like, oh, are you guys getting off here? And he was like, and this is also just another thing with our communication style. Like he asks a lot of questions when he says things, but I have to remember that he's not actually asking me. He's just saying it that way.
Yeah.
But he was like, why would you sit in the aisle seat if you are on a through flight? And I was like, oh, she might have just assumed that everybody else was also on getting, or that everybody else, when she got on, she might not have realized that some people were getting off before her.
Yeah.
And then I immediately realized, like, he was not actually asking me.
He doesn't need a real explanation.
No, he was just like, why would you do that? And then he was like, oh, yeah, well, okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, so.
That's so funny because when you said that, I'm like, my first thought is maybe she has to pee a lot. And so she's
Honestly,
sitting in the aisle.
That's why I picked the aisle. Yeah. So, yeah, no, I feel like it's way easier to do with other people. So this is a good reminder for me that what's another possible explanation. As much as I do that with other people's scenarios, I can do it with my own.
Yeah, completely. The second question that you can ask yourself, it really follows the what's another possible explanation, is consider their world. This is something I really try to do a lot, is try to imagine what might be going on in their life. So maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they're distracted or anxious. Maybe they didn't even realize how it came across. And they didn't see their face when they said it. And they didn't hear the inflection. And I think that's a big one, is like, okay, hold on. That person just talks like that. Like it doesn't mean they're arguing. It just means that that's their tone.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that this is one that I have to ask myself a lot. And I do want to say that it's considering their world, they may have said something that was meant to hurt you. They may have done something that was intentional. And just because they're having a bad day does not write it off and does not excuse the bad behavior. So I'm not saying to do that. I'm not saying, like, if your two friends are hanging out and you, like, it was intentional and they are talking bad about you, that's not okay. You don't have to gaslight yourself into thinking that that's okay. So we're not saying excuse those behaviors. We're saying for the times that it's actually not meant to be harmful.
Yeah.
Like, consider their world. So a big one for me is when people do cut me off in traffic, I'm like, okay, maybe they really have somewhere to be. They're running really late. I remember a long time ago, Dad had said, oh, what was it? Oh, no. It was a long time ago. I used to get so annoyed when semis would pull out in front of you, or they would they take a long time to make it a turn, or they take up a lot of space. And I remember one time being like, oh my gosh, I would never let a semi in front of me. And I remember Dad being like, why? And I was like, well, it's just so annoying. And he was like, well, they have to get places too. This isn't like, they're not. I'm sure if they could get faster, they would.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're so right. They're not wanting to make me mad and cut me off. They just they have to get in this lane because they have to get over. They're just the size of 4 cars. Like, sorry. And I was like,
I have the thought a lot whenever someone's driving weird, or like they have their blinker on and then they turn it off, or like just something is weird that's going on. I have the thought a lot, like, maybe this is one of their first 5 times driving.
Oh my
gosh. I think about Chloe Love a lot, where I'm like, she probably drove really, or I think about even myself. I'm like, the first few times that I drove slow. I didn't merge well. I remember the first time I'm getting on the highway, I think I freaked out and I stopped at the end of the merge lane, and Mom was like, you have to get over. And I was like, shoot. And then I'm going 25 miles an hour onto the on-ramp on the highway and stuff. So I think that a lot when people are just doing odd sayings. I'm like, maybe they aren't comfortable with driving, maybe it's their first time driving, maybe they're whatever.
Maybe they're just new to the area.
Yeah.
They've been driving a long time. They've never driven downtown.
Yeah. I think that all the time with downtown KC, because I go through there a lot. But honestly, Jared doesn't go through there nearly as often as I do. And sometimes he takes the wrong way or whatever. But when we're in the car and he's like, what is this person doing? I'm like, they probably just really, truly don't understand. They don't know. They probably really thought, sometimes people will get in an exit, and I don't think they should do this, but they get in an exit and then they realize, oh shoot, that wasn't the exit. And they pull back over real suddenly. And you're like, ah!
Yes.
It is. They shouldn't do that. It is scary.
Yeah, it's like you gotta stick with it.
Yes,
get off on the next one.
Yes, but at the same time, most of the time, I just assume they truly are just unfamiliar with you.
Yes. No, I'm in the same boat. I think it's so easy to do with strangers
Yeah.
of imagining their world, or maybe their wife's in labor and that's why they're going 80 on a 40. And I'm like, oh, I hope they make it to the hospital on time. But it is a lot harder to do with people in your lives. But I do think that being able to consider their world has made such a difference, especially in a relationship like me and Mason's.
Yeah.
For example, where there are times when he can be really frustrated or really overwhelmed. Like everyone talks about moving is like such a test in your relationship. We are very nice on the surface a lot, but sometimes there can be a little passive aggressive things that get said. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And because we're like pretty kind with each other often, I'm like, if he says something that's like a little snippy, I'm like, okay, what is going on? And I remember this last time we were moving, he was just saying that he was really annoyed, or he felt like my tone was really snippy and that I was having, like, I had to repeat myself a couple times because he couldn't hear me. And he was like, I just feel like you were really annoyed because I couldn't hear you. And I was like, I truly wasn't. I like did not have that at all. So he's assuming negative intent. And I'm like, that really did not happen. And I'm like, are you actually annoyed because you felt like I was being snippy with you? Or are you annoyed because we have 10 minutes left before we have to turn in the keys and you're feeling kind of rushed? And he's like, no, I'm annoyed at you. And I'm like, okay. And then a little bit later, he's like, yeah, no, I think you were right. I think I was like pretty stressed out. And so it was just like, I just felt angry and kind of took it out on you and felt like you were angry. And I was like, I totally understand. Like, I totally understand how you felt. It gave me a lot of grace for him and a lot of being like gentleness. Yeah. Because I was like, okay, this is not how he's meaning to react. This is, he doesn't know that he feels this way. I know he feels this way. Or he doesn't realize this is how he's coming across, but I do know that it is how it's coming across. So it gave me a lot of compassion and a lot of like, okay, I could snip back so easily and we could have this big fight. Yeah. I knew that there was no point in doing that because I knew what was going on and I was like able to consider how he was feeling, even though he didn't know that in the moment. And I do that with a lot of other people in my life. Like your boss at work is really overwhelmed for the day. So maybe they snapped at you a couple times, but I'm not taking it personal because I know that his day has kind of sucked. I'm like, whoa, I hate to be him. Like, you know what I mean?
I'm on the receiving end of this a lot because I don't realize when I'm hangry. And I'm getting better at it. But for the first several years of our marriage, I remember we would sometimes be in the car on the way somewhere or something. And it would also be like on a busy day or whatever. And all of a sudden I would just be really, really snippy with Jared. And then he would say something like, and this is kind of patronizing, so he's not great. But it would bring to the forefront of my mind, like, oh, okay, yeah.
Would he like rub your shoulder and be like, are you hungry, baby?
Not like that. No, he'd be like, it's okay, babe. We'll have lunch soon. And then I would be like, oh. But then I couldn't even fight it because I'm like, actually, I'm starving. That so probably is why I'm frustrated. And it reminds me of when you're working with kids or you're dealing with kids, you consider their world so much. You're like, they didn't sleep well last night. They've been sick the last couple of days. They haven't eaten well. Yeah.
They miss their mom.
Yes.
That's a favorite toy that this kid just took.
Yes, exactly. Like you consider it so much, but then when people become adults, you like forget all that. And so I feel like it is really important to remember, like, yeah, maybe they just didn't sleep well. Or maybe if it's your partner, it's like, did they have a really bad work day? Did they get bad news? Did they get turned down? You don't see every little part of their world. Yeah. So you can just kind of consider it. And then the last thing that I would say about considering their world is honestly, they could just think differently than you. And I always bring this back to the Enneagram. Yes. Because the Enneagram is the soul personality exam or whatever that I would say is based on desires and not about behaviors. And so if someone is motivated and desires different things than you, just at a fundamental level, they may act differently than you. And so when they make a choice or they say something or whatever, they act a certain way. Part of considering their world is like, okay, maybe they did sleep fine. Maybe they're not hungry. Maybe they're not stressed. But they also are just fundamentally a different person. Yes. And so thinking a little bit about okay, I can assume that from their point of view, this is like the best that they could have done.
Mm-hmm.
And with like the experience, everybody has different experiences. Like some people might not have gone through a self-growth, whatever
Yeah.
journey that you have, and they're just not there yet.
Yeah.
And you need to just assume that this is an experience that can help them kind of.
Mm-hmm. I'll never forget when you told me, I think I was complaining about someone doing something really annoying. They were probably going too slow for my liking. And I remember you saying, well, it might not make sense to you, but it makes sense to them. And I think about that all the time.
I do too.
And it is so helpful. And I think it goes along with considering their world. It might not make sense to you, but it makes sense to them. And we've talked about that a lot in episodes before too, of being like, okay, kind of figure out why this makes sense to them. Ask why this is how they do things instead of being like, oh, they're going slow intentionally to piss me off. Or like they're going slow because they're not even considering
They're
me right
clueless.
now.
They're careless. They aren't.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
selfish. Like it's like
Uh-huh.
maybe
This is the pace they move at.
I'm like, yeah, maybe they just don't even realize they're going slow.
Literally, to them, they are rushing.
Yeah, and seriously, some people that is the case. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, and in their world, they're thinking, why is this person rushing me? Why are they like, we don't need to get, there's no deadline. Why are they going in and out? And it's like,
so true.
it's just funny whenever you do consider their world. So that has been a huge helper for me. And I think that's probably what I first do.
it's life changing.
It is life-changing.
I remember learning or hearing that at a conference in college, and both me and Kristen were like, "That is a game changer."
Changer. Yes. I think that is the one where I'm like, maybe it is a little bit of gaslighting myself. That's okay.
I don't care. Yeah, I mean, if it's gonna make you a happier person, have healthier relationships,
Yes.
there.
Especially with those strangers. I'm like, oh, they've got to make it to the hospital. Wife's in labor in the car right now. Like,
It reminds
that's
me.
probably not true.
It
but
reminds me of the game that some couples play when they like go on dates at restaurants and they look around and they're like, "What do you think? What's the deal with them?" And they,
like siblings are dating kind
yeah,
of thing.
yeah, guess their
Friends
profession, or
or-
I guess if they're out on a date, is this the first date or the 50th? Do you think they're talking about whatever? Yeah, it just kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah.
I do feel like the slow thing does move us into our next one because that's one of your triggers.
Yes.
And the next point is to reflect on your triggers,
Mm-hmm.
but on a more deep level.
Yeah.
Because sometimes for you it has nothing to do with what the other person is actually doing. It's more about what's going on internally for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So a lot of times you can kind of ask yourself, what does this remind me of? Or you can ask yourself, why did this hit me so hard? Why
Mhm.
is this such a big deal to me? I think that this is one that I've really had to reflect on because I really hate getting in trouble. Really hate getting like yelled at. And even if it's not yelling, if the voice is being raised or I feel like I'm being lectured, it really triggers me and it really kind of sets me back.
Mhm.
And I automatically want to go on the defense because I'm like, no, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, hold on.
Yeah.
That's actually not what's going on. It's fine. But it reminds me of like being little. And I've always hated getting in trouble. And I'm always getting in trouble. I swear to God. It's like such a double-edged sword. But yeah. So I think that this is something that I have to do a lot and ask myself why I'm feeling this way.
Yeah, I think it's really good because why did this hit me so hard? Especially when, and we talked about this in the victim mindset episode as well, but especially when your reaction, the level of your reaction does not match the level of what happened.
Oh, yeah.
When something, I bring this up all the time, but when Jared and I were first married, there was this incident. We were eating at the coffee table in the living room. I dropped the ketchup bottle. Ketchup went everywhere. And I flipped out. And Jared was like, Morgan, I just think that you're like, this is a really extreme reaction for just like a little ketchup.
Yeah.
Spilling
It can be
everywhere.
cleaned up.
And of course I was like, you're not empathizing with me. And, and then later, kind of like Mason, I was like, I realized that I think I was just stressed. And like my big thing is that I'm worried that if I do something wrong, that someone else is going to be mad at me.
Mm-hmm.
And I get this way even in our relationship. Like I still have to remind myself, like, Jared's not just going to randomly be mad at me for no reason, even if I like spill something. And maybe it's the getting in trouble. I don't really feel like I'm scared of getting in trouble, but I do feel like
You're more scared of messing up.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
failure or like because
doing wrong.
yes, because if I even when I like if I'm in the kitchen and he's in the kitchen too, and I drop like a plate on the ground or something, I immediately look at him and I'm like, I'm sorry, don't get mad. You know, and
Uh-huh.
he's like, I'm not mad at you.
He's like, I didn't even notice.
Yeah, but like if I do something so anyway, so I think that
Mhm.
I just worry that other people are gonna get mad. And so then I have an extreme reaction because I'm one like I guess maybe I'm like putting on a show that like I know I messed up, like I know I did a terrible job, like that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So it is interesting whenever you like look back at like why did that hit me so hard or like why was my reaction so extreme when the thing that triggered it was so little.
Yeah, no, completely. I even have an example that happened pretty recently, and it has nothing to do with like, it doesn't go back to childhood or anything like that. But, and I think that this point of reflecting on your triggers and like asking yourself why, that has a lot to do with communication. Like, you really got to work on it. You got to work on it for so long. It's not easy to just do that, especially in conversation with other people.
Mhm.
But I remember in December, 4 months ago, Mason and I, and then a couple of his friends went out to Chicago.
Mhm.
And we had been out one night and drinking a lot. And Chicago's so expensive. We had been spending money all day long. And I had told Mason, like, oh, yeah, we were dancing. And I was like, I kind of want to go outside and get some fresh air because I'm really
Mhm.
hot. So we go outside, and Mason can not hold, but Mason can seem a lot less drunk than like, even if he's
Yeah.
had 10 beers,
Yeah.
he just doesn't act as drunk as like I would as having 10 beers. And so
Mhm.
that automatically kind of puts me on edge because then I'm feeling stupid for like, oh, I'm really drunk. Why aren't you really drunk kind of thing?
Yeah.
I have like this whole thing with drinking. But so we go outside and we're just hanging out and blah, blah, blah. And I had said, like, okay, yeah, let's go in so I can get another drink. And I remember him being like, Bailey, like, we have been spending so much money today. Like, do you need another drink? We're probably going to go home in like an hour. And I'm automatically, that pissed
Already
me
on
off.
edge.
Yeah. Super triggered me. I'm already drunk. So like, emotions are really heightened. But I always feel inferior to him while we're drinking
Mm.
because he can hold himself so much better.
Mm.
And so I'm immediately like, oh my God, I'm not even acting that drunk. Like, that was such a rude thing to say. I can't believe that you would try to cut me off. I'm like, I'm not even doing anything bad. And then he, bless him, he is so good at talking. So this is like one of those, this is why I started with communication. Like, it's learned and you really have to know how to communicate.
Yeah.
Because this could have turned into a huge fight. Could have turned into me storming home and like the next day being like, wow, what a jerk. But it ended up with him being like, that's not what I'm saying. I don't think you're acting out of control or like anything bad. But I'm saying that we've just spent a lot of money today. We're probably going home within the hour. Do you think you can just go inside and like have water or something? And I was like, no, I don't want to. I'm a grown woman. I can do what I want, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm still on such defense. And he's like, Bailey, this is not what I'm saying. Like, please listen to me, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. And so I decided to really stop taking offense and I really listened to what he was saying. So instead of always having to come back, I remember it in the moment. Be like, okay, hold on. Say what you said again. I'm gonna try to really listen to it this time. He says it. I'm like, okay, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I can go in. I'll try not to get a drink. If I want to get a drink, maybe I will. But I hear that you're not saying I'm acting out of control. I hear that you're not saying that I have spent all of our money. I'm hearing that you're not saying that like I need to go home. I'm hearing all that. I'm like, this is not what you're saying. This is what I thought you were saying.
Mhm.
It's not at all. You didn't say any of that. So I remember being like, all right, let's go back inside. I'll just get a water. And then I drank water the rest of the night, danced my ass off the rest of the night, still had so much fun. And I was like, I'm so proud of myself that I was able to, in the moment, hear what he was actually saying instead of what I thought he was saying and take myself out of it and take all the defenses I had out of it and like actually just hear what he was saying. And then we stayed for like $80 because I
Yeah.
didn't buy 3 or 4 more drinks because I would have.
Yeah.
We're staying for an hour. I'm buying 3 or 4 more drinks.
Yeah.
So I just drank water and then I like loved that night.
Yeah.
So I
that's
don't know.
awesome.
I know. Isn't that funny that it doesn't have to be like these, I don't know. It doesn't, I don't know.
No,
but
it really
like
is
this only
like
was 4 months ago.
yeah.
And I've been working on this for a long time.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It really is just a release of self and release of ego and choosing.
Ego, yes.
It's like choosing choosing the relationship over your ego. And,
Yeah.
and choosing to have a good night over your ego. Like,
Yeah.
you could have just made that night miserable after that point.
Old me would have stormed off.
Yes.
Old me would have been like, call me an Uber, I'm going home.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. And honestly, Mason in a previous self might not have been so good at like diffusing the situation.
Yeah.
And and so it's just being like, I'm gonna abandon my ego for a second and just assume that whatever this person who I love in front of me is doing has nothing, no harm against my ego or
Yeah.
like anything. Like there's no harm against me. It truly is just like taking it for face value.
Yeah.
Because that when you like release the ego, you also release like all the triggers that are attached to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So,
You release for so long, I have drank more than other people around me. And like, I'm always down to keep drinking.
yeah.
And so it's like a huge trigger for me when people are when I feel more drunk than other people. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh shit. And then I feel ashamed or whatever. But then I
Yeah.
like automatically get this defensive trigger.
Yes.
And so I don't know. It was a funny thing.
No, I like that anecdote. That makes a lot of sense.
It was a long story, but it's a true story.
Yes. This next one kind of reminds me of when we were talking about like asking for deadlines in our work balance episode.
Yeah.
But the next one is ask or clarify instead of assuming. So I honestly just assuming, unless it's positive, does make an ass out of you and me. That's the whole thing.
Sure does.
But if in your relationship that matters to you, like the person that you're close to, you can try saying, hey, when you said this, I wasn't sure how to take it. Like, can you help me understand what you meant? It reminds me of what you said when sometimes you and Mason will be like, okay, so this is what my brain is hearing that you're saying. What is your brain saying to me?
Yeah, what are you actually saying?
Yeah, because I don't know if my brain caught that, you know?
I mean, even in that like Chicago story, me being like, hold on, say it all again. I'm going to try to really listen to what you're saying and try to really understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
No, I do. I have to do this one a lot where I'm like, okay, what did you mean by that?
Yeah. Especially if you're doing the thing where you're overthinking and you're repeating over and over and over the thing that they said.
Yeah.
I do this sometimes like with girlfriends I don't see that often or something, but they said something and I'm like, what did they mean by that? What did they mean?
Was that weird?
And I'm like, maybe you should just ask them. Like I either need to just release it or ask them. You know?
Yeah.
And it can be very odd at first, but I feel like it's helpful. And I feel like when you put yourself out there, other people appreciate that.
For sure. Other people really appreciate the chance to explain. It's kind of like the thing that happened with the gender reveal where mom thought I was saying you can't buy anything.
Yeah.
Where I wasn't. Like, and then she did ask, she kind of asked like me to clarify because she asked like, hey, can I do this? And I was like, oh, hold on. That's not what I was saying, blah, blah, blah. And so then it did give me a chance to explain. And I was glad that she didn't go my whole pregnancy thinking she couldn't get anything for her grandbaby. Like,
yeah.
And that sucks because that does not paint me in a good light. And like, that can't feel good to her being like, man, I've been put on I've been told I can't do this. And it's like, oh, that's not what I was saying. I'm sorry. Like, no, it really does. It really does change the conversation a lot.
Yeah. And it just gives clarity. It just clears things up and clears the air, makes it feel less stiff, like when you're together. Because honestly, sometimes it might feel tense on your end and the other person doesn't have that at all. And if you would have just asked, then it would have like released all that tension.
Yeah. The last one on here is just practicing self-compassion. So we talked about this a lot before of just being kind to yourself. So this one, it feels like it could be like it's such a mind shift. But when you are hard on yourself, you tend to be more suspicious of others too, because you tend to think that they also think all the same things that you think about yourself. But if you're kind to yourself, you're less likely to take things so personally.
Yeah, because if you genuinely think that you're a great person, then you're not going to think that the people that are interacting with you think you're a terrible person.
Yeah.
Because you think you're a great person. So yeah, that one's a really, really hard one to work on. And when you have a constant critic in your mind or you're constantly putting yourself down, criticizing yourself, just saying discouraging things to yourself, then you are going to assume that other people assume that about you as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really a bummer. But working on self-compassion it's crazy how you can work on self-compassion and only be working on yourself, and it heals relationships with other people.
It is weird.
Because you're not doing anything in those, like you could be behaving the exact same way, but your brain is just in a better state to interact with them.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Like it's easier if you really like yourself and you know the intent behind of why you do things, and you know the way you say things to people and the words you use. Then when somebody else thinks negatively, you're like, oh, didn't even see that one coming because I did not mean that.
Yeah.
I did not like, that's not who I am. So that's not what I meant. And that's easier for other people to know that that's not who you are. And I think maybe that's what it is with our sisters, of like, we know each other so well that we're like, they would never purposely hurt me.
Yeah.
They would never say something that was meant to tear me down. They would never wish poorly for me.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is, because we know each other's intentions.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I'm with you for sure.
Well, I don't know. I think that these are all really good tips of how to shift the mindset, make yourself view the positive intention, and it just makes you softer. It makes you have more compassion, more forgiveness, more grace, because people need that.
And it just makes you happier in your
Just
everyday
makes you
life.
happier.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like it just makes your brain a better place to live in.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel like things are good, and it makes you go into the day just feeling like refreshed instead of discouraged.
Completely agree. I hope that you, as our listeners, can really take this and really try to apply it to your own lives. If you were listening to this and you felt triggered by it, reflect on those triggers. Ask yourself why. Because I know someone who was saying that from our victim mindset episode. They were like, no, honestly, like I felt like you were just like talking to me. And I was like, oh God. I'm like, well, we definitely weren't. So like, yeah, try to figure out why. And I really do think that this is such a good life change thing that you can do for yourself. And it doesn't take any work besides reflection and compassion.
Yeah. And as always with episodes like this, we are not experts at this either. We literally, some of the situations that we were talking about were within the last 6 months. So it's something that we're all working on together. And honestly, when we do episodes like this, it's just a good reminder for us as well to implement these strategies whenever we are interacting with people in our relationships too. So
completely agree. Well, if you guys were listening to this episode and knew or thought of someone immediately, send this episode to that person, ask for the accountability, ask for the grace, and I don't know, share it with whoever needs to be shared with.
Yes, please share with friends and loved ones. We always love when you do that. And keep an eye out on our at Fill Your Cups podcast, Instagram and TikTok.
Woohoo!
Because as we shared at the beginning with all of your fun spring cleaning ideas, we love to interact with you. So
yeah. Well, that's it for this week. We'll see you guys next week.
Cheers!